It's a place meant for those who exude wealth, confidence, and power. But to those looking at him, this man doesn't seem to belong here. He doesn't match the image they've come to expect. Far from it. "Can I help you?" the salesman asks, his tone polite, but with an unmistakable edge. "Yes," the man replies calmly, his voice steady. "I'm here to see the jets you have available for purchase." For a moment, the salesman pauses, glancing down at the man's dusty boots, his weathered clothes, and the calloused hands that rest at his sides. A smirk crosses his face. "Well," the salesman says, barely hiding his amusement, "these jets are worth millions of dollars. Perhaps you're looking for something a little more within your budget?" The man doesn't flinch. He doesn't argue. He simply stares back, unshaken. No one in that showroom realizes that this man isn't just here to browse. He's about to teach them a lesson they'll never forget. But first, he lets the salesman and everyone else in the room make their assumptions. Before we begin this powerful story, let us know in the comments, where are you watching from? We'd love to hear from you. If this story resonates with you or leaves you thinking, make sure to subscribe and click the notification bell so you don't miss more meaningful content. And don't forget to like the video. It really helps us bring these stories to more people. Let's get started. Jamal Roland isn't just a rancher. He's the owner of one of the most successful sustainable cattle operations in Texas, managing over 2,000 acres of land. But this success wasn't handed to him. It was earned through grit, perseverance, and a refusal to let the odds defeat him. Jamal's story begins in a small rural town in East Texas, the youngest of 5 children born to tenant farmers. His family owned no land of their own, working tirelessly on land they could never call their own. From an early age, Jamal learned the value of hard work, but he also learned the sting of injustice. His parents often spoke in hushed tones about the unfair loans, the better opportunities handed to others, and the constant reminders that being black in this part of the country meant working twice as hard for half the reward. Determined to break free from this cycle, Jamal spent his teenage years doing odd jobs to save money. After graduating high school, he worked multiple shifts, hauling freight, driving trucks, and fixing machinery, pouring every spare dollar into his dream of owning his own land. By his late 20s, he managed to purchase a small plot, starting with a handful of cattle and a vision far greater than his circumstances. But being a black rancher in a predominantly white industry came with its own challenges. Banks hesitated to approve his loans. Suppliers gave him higher prices than they offered his competitors. Buyers undervalued his cattle, and despite his growing success, some of his peers refused to acknowledge his hard-earned reputation. Today, black ranchers make up less than 2% of all ranchers in the United States. Generational wealth, systemic barriers, and a long history of exclusion have limited their opportunities. But Jamal Roland didn't let statistics define him. Over the years, he grew his ranch acre by acre, head of cattle by head of cattle, until he became one of the most respected names in the business. His commitment to sustainable and ethical practices brought him national recognition, and his business expanded to markets across the country. Now he was ready to take the next step, to expand his operations internationally, build partnerships across borders, and reduce his travel time. For that, he needed a private jet. Jamal was no stranger to being underestimated, and as he entered the world of luxury aviation, he braced himself for the challenges ahead. On the other side of the story was Howard Smith, a seasoned jet salesman with over a decade of experience. Howard prided himself on his ability to size people up within moments. He often claimed he could tell whether someone was serious about buying based on how they walked into the room. To his colleagues, Howard was a man who knew how to close a deal. His charm, quick wit, and ability to read potential clients had made him one of the top sellers in the company. Howard came from a middle-class family, worked his way up from a junior sales position, and built a career on confidence and instincts. But those instincts had a flaw, a tendency to judge people based on their appearance. For Howard, a person's clothes, posture, and demeanor often determined whether he gave them his full attention or dismissed them outright. When Jamal walked into the showroom, Howard didn't see a successful rancher. He didn't see a man with millions to spend. He saw someone who in his mind didn't belong. And in that moment, Howard made a decision that would come to define everything that followed. Jamal, however, wasn't there to seek approval. He was there with a purpose, and he carried with him a quiet confidence that would soon shatter every assumption in the room. It was a crisp morning when Jamal Roland arrived at the private jet dealership. The building stood as a testament to luxury, sleek glass walls reflecting the sunlight, with towering hangars showcasing multi-million-dollar jets in pristine condition. It was a space designed to intimidate and impress, a space meant to reinforce exclusivity. As Jamal stepped through the entrance, the room seemed to pause. His boots made a distinct sound against the polished floors, drawing glances from every corner. He walked with purpose, his wide-brimmed hat shading his face, while the clientele in their tailored suits and designer shoes glanced at him with a mixture of curiosity and quiet judgment. Conversations softened, but no one said a word. Jamal approached the front desk where a salesman stood. His name tag read Howard Smith. Howard was impeccably dressed with a crisp suit and a tie knotted with precision. To Howard, this was just another day, a routine parade of wealthy clients. But as his eyes landed on Jamal, his expression shifted slightly. He took in the dusty boots, the weathered jeans, the work-worn hands, and something flickered behind his professional smile. "Good morning," Jamal said, his tone calm and confident. "I'm here to look at jets." Howard's smile tightened. He gave Jamal a quick once-over, as though assessing whether the man before him belonged in this space. There was a moment of silence, just long enough to feel uncomfortable before Howard responded. "Jets," he said, his tone polite but with a faint trace of amusement. "Our jets start at $20 million. Perhaps you're looking for something else?" Jamal met Howard's gaze without flinching. He didn't react to the condescension in the man's voice or the doubt in his eyes. Instead, he simply said, "I'm here to buy a jet. Can you help me with that?" Howard's lips curved into a faint smirk, as though he found the situation mildly entertaining. "Well, we'll see what we can do," he replied. "But if you don't mind me asking, what line of work are you in?" Jamal's response was steady, unbothered. "I run a cattle operation," and he said. "Ranching. We've been expanding and I need a faster way to travel for business." Howard raised an eyebrow, the smirk on his face widening ever so slightly. He didn't outright dismiss Jamal, but the disbelief was written all over his face. He nodded slowly as though humoring him before glancing at his watch. "A cattle operation," Howard repeated, as though the words were foreign to him. He gestured toward the showroom. "Well, let's take a look. But I'll warn you, these jets aren't cheap." As Howard led the way, Jamal followed without a word, his steady demeanor unchanged. The salesman's tone, the subtle smirks, the glances from other customers. It was all too familiar to him. It wasn't the first time someone had underestimated him, and it wouldn't be the last. The showroom floor was grand, filled with polished jets of varying sizes and styles. Howard began explaining the features of one jet, his tone still laced with the assumption that Jamal wasn't a serious buyer. He spoke quickly, barely looking at Jamal as he rattled off the specifications. Meanwhile, a few of the other salespeople nearby exchanged knowing glances. One of them whispered something to another, and they both chuckled quietly. The air in the room felt heavy, the tension unspoken, yet unmistakable. But Jamal didn't react. He listened patiently, asking thoughtful questions that seemed to catch Howard off guard. Every time Jamal showed a deeper understanding of what he wanted, Howard's polite mask slipped for just a fraction of a second before he recovered. And yet, even as Jamal engaged, Howard's dismissive attitude persisted. It was clear that in his mind, this man with dusty boots and a cowboy hat couldn't possibly afford the kind of luxury he was selling. To Howard, this wasn't a client. It was a man who had wandered into the wrong place. But what Howard didn't know, what no one in that room realized, was that Jamal Roland was about to turn every assumption on its head. He had walked into that showroom knowing exactly what he wanted, and he wasn't leaving without it. The stage was set, the lines had been drawn, and soon the truth about who Jamal Roland really was would leave Howard and everyone else in that room stunned. This story is unfolding in a way no one expected. What would you have done if you were in Jamal's position? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We're reading all of them. And while you're here, take a moment to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Let's continue. Howard's tone, already laced with skepticism, grew increasingly dismissive as he led Jamal through the showroom. He motioned toward one of the smaller jets and began describing it, but his words carried little enthusiasm. It was as if he had already decided this wasn't a serious sale. "This one starts at $22 million, Howard said, glancing sideways at Jamal with an amused expression. "Of course, there are more affordable options, if that's what you're looking for." Jamal nodded politely, ignoring the underlying tone. He asked a few pointed questions about the jet's range and capacity, questions that revealed his understanding of the purchase he was about to make. But Howard's smirk only deepened, as though he found the effort laughable. "Listen," Howard finally said, his voice dropping into a condescending drawl. "These jets are worth millions. Maybe you should check out the commercial flights upstairs. They might have something more. Your speed." Jamal paused for a moment, his face unreadable. He had dealt with attitudes like this before. People who saw his skin color, his boots, his hat, and assumed they knew everything about him. He drew a slow breath, steadying himself before replying. "I came here to see private jets," he said calmly. "If you can't help me, maybe someone else can." Howard chuckled under his breath, shaking his head as though the suggestion were absurd. But before he could respond, another voice cut in, a younger voice, confident and professional. "Good afternoon, sir," said Tasha Williams, one of the junior sales associates. She was employed few months ago. She stepped forward, her posture respectful, her tone warm. "I'd be happy to assist you. Can you tell me more about what you're looking for?" Tasha Williams grew up in a working-class neighborhood where opportunities often felt out of reach, especially for someone like her, a young black woman with big ambitions. From a young age, Tasha knew she wanted to excel in a field where she could prove her skills and rise to the top through hard work and determination. Her parents, both factory workers, instilled in her the values of perseverance and humility. They often reminded her, "You'll have to work twice as hard to get half as far, but don't let that stop you." And Tasha took those words to heart. She earned a degree in business administration while juggling 2 part-time jobs to pay her way through college. After graduating, she struggled to find a foothold in the competitive world of sales, often facing subtle biases that tried to diminish her capabilities. But she refused to let those challenges define her. Landing her first job at the private jet dealership was no easy feat. She was the only black woman on the sales floor, and many doubted her ability to connect with the high-net-worth clients that frequented the showroom. Tasha understood that treating every client with respect wasn't just good business. It was the right thing to do. And it was this mindset that set her apart on the day Jamal Roland walked through the doors. Little did she know, her approach would not only lead to the biggest sale in the dealership's history, but also change the trajectory of her career forever. Howard raised an eyebrow and said to Tasha, "He just going to waste your time. I have been in this place long before you." Tasha didn't reply him. He stepped back as Tasha took the lead. Jamal turned to her, his expression softening slightly. "I need something with a range of at least 5,000 miles, Jamal explained. "It's for business travel. I'll need space for about 8 passengers and cargo space for equipment." Tasha nodded, taking notes as Jamal spoke. She didn't interrupt, didn't question his motives or his ability to pay. Instead, she listened intently, asking follow-up questions to clarify his needs. "We have several options that could work for you," she said after a moment. "Let me show you a few models that fit your requirements." As Tasha led Jamal to another section of the showroom and asked, "What can I offer you?" Jamal replied, "Water is okay." She went inside the office to get him water, while she continued showing Jamal different jets. Howard lingered in the background, watching with crossed arms. His smirk was gone, replaced by a faint look of annoyance. This wasn't just about Howard's attitude. This moment highlighted something far bigger, a system that judged people by their appearance, that assumed success could only look a certain way. Howard wasn't just dismissing Jamal, He was operating within a world that often failed to recognize wealth and power in forms that didn't align with traditional expectations. Blacks face unique challenges in high net worth spaces where their presence is often met with skepticism, if not outright hostility. Despite being one of the wealthiest black ranchers in the country, Jamal had walked into that showroom knowing he would have to prove himself yet again. It's a reality that black entrepreneurs and executives navigate daily, and Jamal was no exception. But what set Jamal apart was his ability to remain composed in the face of such treatment. He didn't let Howard's dismissive comments rattle him. Instead, he shifted his focus to someone who was willing to see him for who he truly was, a serious buyer with a clear vision and the means to back it up. Tasha, unlike Howard, treated Jamal with the respect he deserved. She walked him through each model, patiently answering his questions and offering thoughtful suggestions. Her professionalism didn't waver, and slowly the atmosphere began to shift. But even as the conversation unfolded, the eyes of the room remained on Jamal. Other salespeople glanced his way, some with subtle curiosity, others with quiet amusement. They couldn't help but wonder, what was this man doing here? Could he really afford what he was asking for? Howard, still watching from a distance, seemed unwilling to let the matter drop. He leaned over to a colleague and whispered something, a faint chuckle escaping his lips. He wasn't ready to take Jamal seriously. What Howard didn't realize, what no one in that room could possibly anticipate, was that Jamal was about to do something that would leave every one of them questioning their assumptions. The moment was building, the tension thick in the air. And soon the truth would emerge in a way that no one, not even Howard, could ignore. Jamal stood quietly as Tasha explained the features of each jet, her tone professional and respectful. She outlined the specifications, the range, the passenger capacity, and the customization options available. She wasn't rushing him or assuming anything. She treated him like any other serious client, and Jamal, with his calm demeanor, took it all in. As they moved to the far end of the showroom, Tasha stopped in front of the largest and most luxurious jet available, a model designed for CEOs, high-profile executives, and world leaders. "This is the top of the line," Tasha said. "It has a range of over 7,000 miles, seating for up to 12 passengers, and advanced technology for long-distance travel. We can customize the interior to include private suites, conference rooms, or anything else you'd need." Jamal nodded thoughtfully, asking a few more detailed questions about the jet's specifications and customization options. Each question showed his deep understanding of what he was looking for, surprising Tasha with his knowledge and clarity. Finally, after a brief pause, he said, "I like this one. Let's move forward with the purchase." For a moment, Tasha was stunned, but quickly recovered. "Of course, sir," she said. "Would you like me to prepare the paperwork?" Jamal smiled slightly. "Yes, and I'd like to go over the customization options immediately." Howard, who had been watching the interaction from a distance, overheard the conversation. His head snapped up, his previously smug expression now replaced by disbelief. He stepped forward, struggling to contain his shock. "Are you serious?" Howard asked, unable to mask his disbelief. Jamal turned to him, meeting his gaze with calm confidence. "Yes, I'm serious." Howard hesitated, then said, "You do realize this jet starts at $50 million, right?" Without a word, Jamal reached into his pocket, pulled out a neatly folded document, and handed it to Tasha. It was proof of funds, showing that he not only had the means to purchase the jet, but could do so outright. Tasha reviewed the document and nodded professionally. "Thank you, Mr. Roland," she said. "I'll begin the process immediately." Howard stood frozen, staring at the paper in Tasha's hands, his disbelief now mixed with embarrassment. Jamal turned to him, his voice calm but firm. "You should have judged me by my work, not my boots," he said quietly. At that moment, the showroom manager entered the room, alerted by the commotion. The manager, a tall man with an air of authority, approached Jamal with a polite smile. "Mr. Roland," the manager said, extending his hand, "I just wanted to personally thank you for choosing us for your purchase. I've been observing the interaction, And I want to commend Tasha for the way she handled everything. Her professionalism and attention to detail are exactly what we strive for here. Jamal shook the manager's hand and nodded. Tasha was excellent, he said. She listened, answered my questions, and treated me with respect from the moment she approached me. The manager smiled warmly, then turned to Tasha. Tasha, this is one of the biggest deals we've ever had in this showroom. If you're able to close this sale, and I have no doubt you will, you'll be setting a record here. I'll personally recommend you for a promotion for your exceptional work today. Tasha's eyes widened slightly, but she quickly regained her composure. Thank you, sir, she said. I'll make sure everything is handled perfectly. The manager gave her an approving nod before turning to Howard. His tone grew firmer. Howard, I've been hearing some concerning feedback about your attitude toward potential clients. Today should be a lesson for you. In this business, we don't judge people by how they look or what they wear. We treat everyone with respect. Going forward, I expect better from you. Howard, clearly uncomfortable, nodded stiffly but said nothing. A few weeks later, after the sale was finalized and the jet delivered, the showroom held a meeting to recognize Tasha's achievement. The manager stood at the front of the room addressing the staff. Today we celebrate Tasha, who has not only closed the largest deal in our showroom's history, but has also demonstrated the professionalism and integrity we value most in our team. Effective immediately, Tasha will be promoted to Senior Sales Manager. Congratulations, Tasha. The room erupted in applause as Tasha stepped forward to accept her promotion. Howard clapped half-heartedly, his expression a mixture of regret and resignation. From that day on, Howard worked under Tasha's leadership, a humbling experience for someone who had once dismissed her as a junior associate. For Jamal, this moment wasn't just about buying a jet. It was about proving a point he had been forced to prove time and time again. It was a reminder that success doesn't come with a specific look, and that respect and professionalism should never be tied to assumptions. And for Howard, it was a lesson he wouldn't soon forget. Every glance at Tasha, now his superior, was a reminder of the consequences of underestimating someone, whether a colleague or a client. It was a reminder that success belongs to those who work for it, regardless of how they might appear at first glance. What do you think? Do we need to challenge how we judge others by appearances? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. If you found this story meaningful, give the video a like and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to click the notification bell so you're the first to know when we share more inspiring stories. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.